Wonderful. Wonderful. We'll give everybody a chance to kind of log in and get settled. And I see we have a few people coming in right now. And guys, if y'all are tuning into us, just bear with us a couple of moments. I want to give everybody a chance to log in and get settled for a little lunchtime discussion. And we're going to talk about kind of speaking the language, mapping the marketing path between prospective patient and provider. So get settled, get a cup of coffee, get a water, and give us just a moment as we get everyone to log in here. And I'll go over some of the details but if you guys have any technical issues or you're having a tough time hearing us chat, you can put that in the chat. We have Dave Growl of Dreamscape Marketing is in the background making this machine run smoothly. And so if you're having any technical issues, you can chat him in the chat, and we'll take care of those over there. Wonderful. I see he's playing around in the chat already. That's excellent. Another thing too that I always like to have fun with in these deals is if you are tuning in out there, please put where you're watching from. I love that. Whenever we started entering into this Zoom world, in early 2020, it was always just kind of a cool deal to see everybody signing in from all over the world, and thought that was neat. And so we like to continue that tradition. So yeah, if you logged in, put in the chat where you're watching from, and feel free to interact with one another in the chat over there. Something else too that I'll offer is we really want this to be interactive. We want you guys to participate in this, that this is a panel discussion. And you guys didn't know this, but when you logged in, you became part of the panel. And there's so many different viewpoints and so many different ways to reach people that we want you to be a part of this discussion. And so if you'd like to ask questions and weigh in with either myself or Allison, we want to make sure that we can see that. So you're going to put that in the Q&A section. If you go to the bottom of the window and you hit the Q&A button, you'll be able to ask us questions there directly. So just to clarify, you're going to put in the chat where you're watching from. If you have any technical issues, you're going to put that in the chat. And if you have questions or points for us, for Allison or myself, you're going to put that in the Q&A. I do want to say that before we get started, that Amanda, who is going to join us today, Amanda House Wilson, she had to pull out. She had a family issue that came up last minute, and she won't be joining us today. So it'll just be myself, Glenn Hadley, and Allison Harden, and you guys participating in this. With that, I'm going to give it just maybe one more minute to let everybody log in. I'm kind of looking in the chat over there. It's pretty neat to see people from Fort Worth, Texas. I love it. San Antonio, Fort Myers, Florida, Annapolis, Maryland. I love that. I'm sitting here in Annapolis, and it is a nice, cool day here. Oh, excellent. I see Haley from Boise, Idaho. Right on. Love me some Boise out there. Mr. Jeff Holbrook, outstanding. It's really good to see everybody logging in today. Wonderful. Danielle is watching from Centennial Peaks in Colorado. Right on. Wonderful. It's really good to see everybody here and logging in. So with that, I want to go ahead and we'll get started, and we'll allow people to join the conversation throughout. As we go along, just to introduce everybody, guys, my name is Glenn Hadley. I am the Senior Vice President of Strategy for Dreamscape Marketing in Columbia, Maryland. And we're presenting today on mapping the marketing path from patient to provider. It's called Speaking the Language. And my co-presenter today is Allison Harden. Allison.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Harden, and I am here in Austin, Texas, representing a new program that started this spring called Integrate Intensives. And I am their Director of Referral Relations. And I have fallen in love with Austin while I've been here.
It's wonderful. I really appreciate you being a part of this and coming on. I'm really excited to be with all of you guys today and talk about a subject that that isn't really talked about a lot. And so just want to dig into it. We'll go ahead and get started and cover this. Here's the challenge. Whenever we're talking about marketing and business development in behavioral healthcare, and this is for behavioral healthcare professionals, whether it's in a group setting, whether it's you work for a facility, whether you're a CMO, whether you're a business development rep, or if you're in your own private practice and you are out there representing yourself. I want us to talk and have a conversation today about this enigma that is business development / marketing slash referral relations in behavioral healthcare, because once again, it is an enigma. And I had no idea getting into this world what this was about. There wasn't a lot on it, and come to find out, behavioral healthcare and the way that we do business is unlike any other industry out there. There really isn't a precedent for what we do. And oftentimes I found that people get into situations where they're put in charge of marketing, whether it is for themselves, their program, or they're marketing for another facility, and they don't have a lot of experience or training behind it, and they're expected to just go. And so we really want to shed some light on that today and talk about those challenges and really what we do in this space. I'm going to talk a little bit about the B2C channel, the business to consumer channel in this space, because it's something that's often not understood, whether you're in behavioral healthcare or not. It's not quite understood. And then Allison and I are going to both talk a little bit about the B2B relationship that takes place. And we're going to talk about digital, and we're going to talk about people too. But I would like to get started by introducing who we are and kind of how we got here. And so I know I've been talking a lot. Allison, I'd like for you to let the audience know kind of a little bit about your journey here and what got you to this place where you can talk with us today from experience about this pathway.
Well, my first role in business development was with the Betty Ford Center, and that was about halfway through my adult life. I had spent the first half of my adult life working in sales, the hospitality industry, and was looking for more purposeful work. And I used my recovery. I was in addiction recovery and had a yearning, a calling, if you would, to try to see if I could build a career of some way, shape, or form out of that. So that was really what led me to the Betty Ford Center and finding out that there's this whole thing called sales and marketing that with treatment. And I have now been blessed to work for the Betty Ford Center. I have also worked for another large residential program in Denver called Cedar in business development. And most recently, as I mentioned, I'm with Integrate Intensives, which is a trauma outpatient program. So really have taken a lot of what I learned from sales in other industries about building good relationships and working with people that I trust and respect. I have a spirit of what can I do and help you with? It's not just what can I get from you or what can you give me, but I really hope with my interactions with others that it's collaborative and that people feel that they can come to me for support along with bringing me business. So I am just completely blessed today to be sitting here talking about this field and what I've learned along the way and what I'm still learning. I came to Austin 6 weeks ago, really having a handful of people that I knew. And I can honestly say right now, I feel like I've got some friendships now in the Austin market and Texas overall. So it works, it just, people help me. People are opening doors for me. People are introducing me to people that they feel are important for me to meet. And I like to believe that that's because I showed up for them in a real, authentic, honest, communicative way, collaborative, trying to learn about them as much as I wanted them to learn about what I'm doing and what my job is here.
Wonderful, wonderful. I appreciate that, and once again, just really glad to have you be a part of this. And I know we're in recovery month here, so I do want to make a note of that. You know, this month is kind of set aside to recognize those in long-term recovery, and I'm just really glad to be a part of this industry that does help people in whatever form that recovery takes, or whatever form of that recovery looks like. So I just want to recognize that. Um, and also, just for those of you out there who I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Glenn Hadley, and I get a chance to work with many of the programs across the country on the digital marketing side with Dreamscape Marketing now, and I had the opportunity to get kind of a crash course into this space, and I built an alumni program for a residential treatment facility, and then did business development for a number of years, and then went into the conferences and did conferences in this space until COVID hit, and I had the opportunity to work for some just amazing organizations and do just about every job that there is in this world, and get a chance to see it from the ground up, and see what it's like to actually be working in the trenches, and also be working between the referral source, the referent, the patient, the clients, and the providers out there, and also um, see some of the interactions on the payer side as well. And so I've kind of had an opportunity to see this industry from all sides, and this area, especially in the bridge, being the bridge between the patient and provider, is an area that I'm very passionate about, because there is not a lot out there. I do want to tell a little bit of this story and see if this rings true for many of you out there. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the issues that we see, and kind of paint this picture of some of the problem, and then we'll get into the solution for this. And one of the major challenges that I see in on the digital marketing front is that in behavioral health care, we are on the digital side, we are the main business to consumer channel in digital marketing. That is really it. We do not often see a direct to consumer marketing channel where an individual goes out on the street and goes looking for a customer or a client or a patient to bring them into services. The main avenue for that is through digital marketing. And so that is the main focus or main focal point of that. We are the bridge between the patient and the provider in this space. And often the challenge that I see with that is when you look at the different websites or the different web presence, the different digital marketing vehicles that are out there, they all look very similar. And that is extremely confusing for the patient or the client. And I want to dig into this point just briefly. Is think about the terms patient and client. We see them used interchangeably in behavioral health care depending on the geography, where a person or program is located, what the social norms are around that area, and what the market is accepting of in that particular space. And yet, when you talk to a client or a client family, and you use the terms client or patient interchangeably, it can be confusing to them. And so even in what we call them, what we describe to them, we're a little ambiguous right now in our language. I think that's something that we can do a better job of digitally through putting education out around that and talking about those particular terms interchangeably, that it's client and patient can be, we could be talking about the same person. So that's just a brief aside, but it just really does talk about some of the confusion that's put out there. I also see websites. I analyze a lot of websites on a daily basis. And in looking at these, there's a number of them that look very, very similar or the same. And that can be confusing to a client. who's out there looking, remember that in this digital marketing channel, we are the bridge between the patient and the provider. We are the direct to consumer link. And if we're not clear on what we're calling the patient, the client, if we're not clear on the different services that we offer and how they are different, and if we're not really educating them, it can be very confusing. And if it all looks the same, it all looks the same. And that's a challenge that we have to present. I also, getting into this space, I got into it without much education, without much training, and was expected to hit the ground and go, and just go do what you do, which I still at the time did not quite understand what I did. And so I definitely want to highlight that on the person side of it. And Allison, in that, like when we're talking about business development and the people side of marketing, has that been your experience to see people get almost, I hate to use this term, but thrown to the wolves and just expected to go?
I know it always depends on who was in the job before you. Are you starting out for the first, are you the first person in this role, or did you inherit this role? And great to find out before you say yes to a new position, right? Know if you're coming with a book of business and actual accounts that you're going to be expected to manage and grow, or are you being asked to develop something brand new that that there hasn't been any history around? So this role that I took here was, I got to inherit someone who had already paved the way. And so when I started, I'll say, calling people, started out by picking that phone up and calling people, I was received very warmly because of the genuine great job that someone had done prior to me stepping into this. And that was attractive to me when I decided to come to this market that I didn't have a lot of foothold in. I had done the bulk of my selling in the Colorado market, and I feel like I've got a really great network built there, but coming here, I didn't. And so that was important to me, to be able to know that somebody had already been paving the way. And I learned within that first week that he was loved and adored and respected. And they took my calls and they made appointments, and they, right out of the gate, they wanted to help me. And that was a real great benefit to me, and made my job easier as I was getting started. So that's what I have to say about kind of that.
Yes, and that experience I find is, as I've gone to different programs, either working for them or consulting, is that that every experience is a little bit different, and some are like you're describing, and then others are don't have the same experience whenever they walk in, and not being handed that warm handoff. I think that's a challenge. Another challenge that I see in business development and marketing specifically is one of the other. It's one extreme or the other, and no matter what program you're representing out there, if you're in the audience today and you're a private practice clinician, or if you're a business development manager or a CEO, CMO of a company, I'm sure that you've seen these two extremes on the people side of things, where you see a business development representative who is all business, who comes in and is like, it's a numbers game. It's how many people do I need to get this month? Let's go make this happen. And you hear them on the phones, and they're talking to a mother who is pouring out her heart about her son, who she's trying to get help for. And she's going through her story and telling like what this experience means to her, and the person on the other end of the phone cuts her off to ask her about what kind of policy she has, because it's about numbers. So I've seen that extreme take place, and then also we've seen the other extreme, where same conversation, the mom is pouring her heart out about her loved one, and the person on the other end the business development rep or the alumni professional who's talking with the mom will end up getting into a very long, drawn-out conversation. We'll try to interject help. We'll actually become the help, and it oftentimes engages in a very codependent relationship on the phone. And the issue with that is, it's their job to get them to the help, and a lot of these people don't have the qualifications to be offering therapy or treatment. And two, it's not a good use of time. If we're, I've actually managed teams where I would talk to an individual and ask them how they were only made 3 calls in a day, and they started to explain these 3 calls and how these 3 calls were, 3 hours long each, and started detailing all of the struggles that this person was going through, and so for me, having to coach them around that we are not the help, that we're the bridge to get them the help. So I see those 2 extremes out there as a problem. We're either way too on the business side, the numbers game, or we're way too in the helping side. And I think that comes with training, that comes with understanding of this, talking about having some professional boundaries, but also having some empathy. I really see that as a problem. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Allison, or anything that touches a chord?
Well, you described so beautifully the total spectrum of everything in between. When I worked at the Betty Ford Center, I didn't get a lot of crisis calls because I was representing in the Colorado market a children's program. So the calls were more around, how do I get my child help? It was a prevention type program. So it wasn't that acuity, very, very stressful call. And then when I moved over to business development for a residential treatment center, and I started getting those calls from those mothers that were sitting in an ER. And I remember vividly, like maybe a year into that job, where I just knew when I got those calls that I had to give that person 20 minutes. That was kind of my magic amount of time. I knew that they needed to get some stuff off their chest and they needed some help, and to try to get that call, get that panicked mother in that life and death situation off the phone in 5 minutes was not realistic, nor did it feel human to me. Now, I was that person that had to learn. I don't have an hour to give her, but I just came up with this kind of 20-minute formula where 10 minutes was about me finding out what's going on. And I tried to direct the conversation with asking lots of questions versus that just venting and, pouring out information. I tried to direct the information that I was gathering so that I could move into really getting into solution and helping her, whether it was sending her 2 or 3 places. I always felt like I could leave after that 20 minutes, giving 2 to 3 next steps for them. And if my program and how she found me was in the mix, of course, that's what I was being paid to do. But it was ethical for us to also give other options, and it isn't ethical for me to send her to a self-pay, full pay treatment option, which happened to be what I was representing at the time. This was years ago when we weren't taking insurance. They do now, but back then they weren't. And if they were in a cash situation, right, there is some financial stuff that has to be discussed gently, because the worst thing for me to do for that situation is to send her to 3 places that are going to be $30,000 cash when she doesn't have it. That's pouring fire on the wound. And so part of that 20 minutes was finding out what resources do they have? Do they need to use insurance? Do they have some resources? You got my number from the hospital. Did they tell you that right now that our program is cash only? To just kind of that's those good qualifying questions. It's business development is about gathering the information so that we can help people get the help that they need, or the resources that they're looking for. So I get your point. Yeah, I get your point around diving right into, cutting them off at the knees and asking about the money right up front. But I also understand that does have to be part of that first conversation so that we know what we're working with.
Yes, and that I want to quickly turn the attention to our marketing departments out there, our marketing folks that are listening in, is that it's our job on the marketing side to educate the clients. It's our job to have these different resources available to them, to where the patient or client can go on our websites and understand more about the different services that we offer, but also the different services that are out there. I have my own recovery journey, my own recovery story. But before I entered into this world of behavioral health care, I had no idea that any of this world existed out there. I was a tennis pro that was going through some struggles of his own, but I was definitely was a man of means, and yet I had no idea that all of these services out there were available, and that I was not alone, and that I had plenty of people to help. And it's our job as marketers to put those resources out there, to where whenever a loved one or a family member is going to our website and looking through, they don't just see that we offer PHP, IOP, and what insurances that we take. That is very important, but they also get a chance to understand what is PHP, what is the difference between IOP, what does the recovery journey look like, what is the difference between developmental trauma and PTSD, what is the difference between a mental health facility and a substance use facility, what are the differences. And I think those need to be spelled out, and it's our job as on the marketing front to put that information out there as an educational resource for the patient or client, however you want to describe them. And I think that is a big issue. The last problem that I want to discuss and throw out before we start getting into the solution is that in behavioral healthcare, we are talking about the product here. What we are really talking about is this abstract connection between patient and provider. We're talking about this therapeutic alliance that takes place and enables healing to take place in that spot. And it's not, if you ask 100 different people all across the country in behavioral healthcare in different walks, and you ask them what we do, you're going to hear a lot about modalities, because that's something we can put our finger on. But in the end, all of those different modalities and those different venues and vehicles are a way for us to establish a strong therapeutic alliance. So when an individual comes in and their brain is telling them to do something that just they want to do, that they've been used to doing, that has worked in the past over and over again, that there is a strong enough therapeutic alliance between the patient and the provider that they lean into that alliance more than they lean into the old pattern of behavior. And that's really what we're talking about here. That's the message that that's the product that we're selling, and it's abstract. It is so vague out there. And I believe that that's a story we need to tell. So that is a problem. One of the challenges around that alliance and what we're doing in that healing place is that you can establish that therapeutic alliance in a very clinical, rote mechanical setting just as easily as you can out in the wilderness of Colorado in a wilderness program. You can establish that therapeutic alliance in a detox in Manhattan, the same as you can in a private practice one-on-one session in Austin, Texas. There are so many ways, so many doorways into each individual's recovery journey, and to establish that alliance, that it can be a bit ambiguous. And that's something that I don't think is talked about enough, and that is a problem. We're put in a situation where we're selling something that's not tangible, that you can't touch, to a market that doesn't even really know what the problem is, right? In a way that we can't really have metrics that show this is what works. it's a very challenging industry. And so those are some of the issues. So I just want to briefly go over that. One, when we get into this field, many of us don't have the training. We're expected to hit the ground running and just go. We don't know what came before us, if we were able to have a warm handoff or not. Also, we're selling a very abstract thing that's not really tangible out there. Those are some of the big issues. Or the one I described, we're either all business or we're all help, and there's not much in the middle. So those are kind of the issues or the problems that we see in this deal. And I want to start moving into the kind of the solution for this. And luckily, the solution for all of these challenges that we face really is about building trust. That's really, no matter if we are doing that through our digital campaigns, whether we're doing that through the website, through an email campaign, through a traditional marketing campaign, or we're doing it on the people side with business development, with advocacy work, with alumni. This really is about building trust. Because in the end, if we're selling this product, this therapeutic alliance, if that's what we're selling, then we need to at least be able to do that in our marketing channels. We need to be able to build that same level of trust. And so we're going to get into that. We're going to get into some of the different ways, but in B2C, when we're talking about the digital component and how we build that trust, remember that our target audience really is the patient or the client, or in some cases, the referral source, the private practice clinician that is looking at our website, and they are looking for trust builders. And so I'm going to go into different ways that we can do that. On the business development front, it's the same thing. We're looking to build trust with our referral sources, saying what we do, doing what we say, showing up with authenticity. So we'll dig into that. Allison, is there anything you wanted to add before I start digging into the solution bits and start breaking those down?
I'm just going to quickly share that when I got to Austin and I was starting to, do these warm calls to people that had worked with the previous business development person, one of the things I noticed is bios on websites, and when I was calling on clinicians, and case discharge planners, case managers, there is a wealth of information on so many of these people now on their websites. And there was such a humanistic a side of it. I learned who were hikers and who, just there was such a personal flavor to so many of these bios. So I think that's a great trust builder for both family members. When you're looking at referring somewhere, that those clinicians are humanized a little bit, all the degrees and all the training and years of experience and the passion for the work is, of course, that's important. I just wanted to comment from a digital standpoint. I have noticed that bios are getting much more friendly than they were when I first got into this field. There's just more of a human element to it. I think that's a beautiful thing, because this is, for so many of these people that are reading these bios, it's a life and death decision that they're trying to make for their loved one.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm a firm believer in having a very clear team bio structure page on your website. It really shows the who they are, the human side of them, what is important to them, because in behavioral health care, people refer to people. They really do. And so I think it is important to show that on there. And I know, as someone that has referred to different programs across the country, I don't know every program out there. I don't know too many people that do. There are a few out there that know every program out there. But there are some places where I have to go look up and see a different program if I'm looking to refer them or refer a patient to a program. And I may not know someone in that state, and I may reach out and ask around, but I always go to the website first to see the team. And if they have a team showing on there, I can see their clinical director. I can see what their clinical director is about. I feel much more comfortable researching them to find out if that's an appropriate place, rather than seeing a website without the team on there. And so that is a big piece. Thank you for bringing that up. So here I have about 7 different points I want to go over quickly on the digital front. And the number one thing for us whenever we're running a marketing department or if you are doing your own marketing for your private practices, is you want this to be an education piece. And what I mean by that is be an expert at what you know that you don't know everything, and be willing to learn what you don't know. No one is going to know everything. And when we talk about this doorway into a behavioral health journey, whatever that is, either recovery from mental health or substance use disorder, we talk about those multiple doorways. Just know that we're not going to be everything to everyone. And so being an expert at what you know and what you do is so important to put that out on the website. And don't be afraid to say that we don't do things. I had the opportunity to work with a very large marketing department in substance use treatment, and there were 30 or 40 individuals on the marketing floor, and I gave them the opportunity to do a question and answer with me once a week, and we talked about the landscape in substance use treatment. We also talked about the recovery landscape, and we talked about different personas in behavioral health care. And it gave the marketing team an advantage because they could hear what was going on in our industry, in our field. They could hear what was going on when a mom would call talking about her son. And you're going to hear me reference that a lot, because in substance use treatment, that is what we see the majority of the time. Those calls are from mom calling about her loved one. And so knowing what it's like to be that individual, knowing what it's like to be lost, to be searching for answers, to want to understand this ethereal thing out there that we do in substance use treatment, and not getting real answers. Like, that was important for me to be able to share that with our marketing department. And so if you're watching this today and you're a CMO or you're part of a marketing team, I highly encourage you to really have education groups around what you do for your marketers, so they understand when they're writing content, whenever they're putting digital assets out, that they understand the current market, what is going on in our industry, what are some of the hot topics that are taking place right now, what are some of the new doorways into recovery that are just emerging, what are some of the doorways into recovery that have closed. And also to understand the recovery journey for someone that is, let's say that they're a two-tour Army vet that's coming back to the States with severe PTSD. Understanding what it's like to not only be that person, but to also be a family member of that person, the loved one that's coming home, that they're coming home to. Really educate your staff on that. I found that in doing those education groups with the marketing teams, it humanized what we did. It made the writing more compassionate. It made our campaigns more compassionate because they could understand where that person was coming from. And it was definitely more helpful to the individual seeking help. So definitely be an expert at what you know, learn about what you don't know. That's a big deal on the education piece. The next point, working with either your marketing teams, working with your marketing agency, or really developing this yourself to accentuate your program's personality. I can tell you, Dreamscape Marketing, that one of the things that I hear often is that our website looks just like everybody else. I hear that from people that we're going to start working with, that their website looks like everybody else. They don't want it to look like everybody else. And then whenever we start talking with them and asking them how they're different, we hear the same thing. Okay, they talk about the modalities that they do, but the piece of property that they're on, and then we hear about their food, and we hear about what really separates them though is their people. That's what we hear about over and over and over again. I hear that consistently from just about every facility that I talk to that we onboard. And so I say that, and if everybody if we need to differentiate and really show the client what the personality of our facility is, or what the personality of our practice is, we need to be able to accentuate that and talk about our differences. We need to be able to put those things out there that are different from others. If you have equine therapy at your facility, really accentuate that and talk about that. Not just say that we have equine therapy, really explain what that is. Go into the details of what a day in the life of somebody looks like that's participating in that program and what they can expect to gain out of it. Really dig into the differences to where we're not I will tell you this on the digital marketing agency front, that we're not just stuck trying to find the differences and pull it out and putting out just another website that says the same thing. We don't want to do that. We want to have something that really accentuates who you are and what you are. And that starts with you. You have to know what your program does, what your practice does. If you are a private practice therapist and you really train in the Dick Schwartz IFS framework, if you're an internal family systems person, let's talk about that. Let's put that out there. Let's coordinate with other people with other therapists that maybe don't ascribe to that or don't work in that, so you guys can have a good referral relationship. Really accentuate the differences. Highlight those differences. One thing that I used to do in the field whenever I'd go to a new program is I'd ask them, what makes you different? And you would be amazed to hear how many people stumbled over that. Know where you're different. Another point, say what you do and do what you say. Okay, if you are a drug rehab center, tell people that's what you are. Don't try to beat around the bush. Don't try to do these beautiful words that were, a healing place for mom. Like, so, no, like really talk about what you are. What do you do? Are you a PTSD specific facility? Tell people. Do you do EMDR in your private practice? Tell people. Like, be very specific about what you do and don't beat around the bush. The client is not going to want to educate themselves around all of these different words that we may use for the same thing. If they're looking for a mental health facility to treat chronic depression, then your website better say, we are a mental health facility that treats chronic depression. Don't beat around the bush. Be very clear on what you do. And I'll throw this one out there. I don't see this too much anymore, but this is kind of an interesting story around it, is that if you have a putt-putt little golf course on your facility grounds, tell people that you have this cool little antiquated putt-putt golf course on your grounds. Don't say, yes, we have an 18-hole golf course, bring your golf clubs. Don't say that. That is one of those trust builders that you can talk about and really build trust with the client. If you have it, accentuate it. If you don't, say you don't. That's fine. You can say what you're appropriate for and what you're not, and clearly define that. Because in the end, if a mom or a father or a husband is looking for help for a loved one, and you have what they have, or you actually say, we don't do this, these are some of the providers, these are some of the people that we work with, you have become a bridge or a doorway for that person, and you've answered their question. And that's what we're really trying to do in this deal. Say what you do and do what you say. The next one is be an educational resource. I think that goes without being said. We too many times on our websites, I do hear this a lot, that we don't want to put it on there if we don't do that. I agree that you don't want to put on there that we are a country club golf resort if we're not a country club golf resort. But we do need to talk about the efficacy of establishing a therapeutic alliance with a golf pro. We need to talk about the efficacy of these things, that there are other ways out there, other doorways out there, because we can be that educational platform for the client or the client family that's walking in that doesn't know. We can educate them. And in the end, it really does benefit us as a business to be the educational clearinghouse for people, to explain to them what this world looks like and what this means. Two more things. Keep it simple. I do think that we get lost in the words. We get lost in the in what we're trying to say and trying to sound smarter than we are. Really keep it very simple. We need to have a very simple call to action. We need to have very simple words on our site. Remember that Google reads at an 8th grade reading level. That's it. And our family members out there that are looking for help, they do not understand the difference between CBT and DBT. They don't understand the difference between PHP and sober living. They really don't. We have to educate them, but also in your first line of defense, your first presentings to them, please keep it simple. One simple call to action. That's on the digital front. Those are some things that are kind of broad, and I'd be more than happy to go into detail in any of these as we go along, more of a one-on-one thing. But Allison, I'd like to kind of turn it over to you to talk just a little bit about the people side of this, and talk about the interaction between the patient and the provider from the people side.
Well, one of the topics that we wanted to just touch on today for sure is just that element of self-care and how important, when you were talking about people getting into this field and how so many of us just got in here and we didn't really get a lot of training and we kind of figured some things out. So many of us in this field are in early recovery, and that can be challenging, especially with dealing with families. And, lends to that story around people that spend too much time on the phone, because they're getting hooked. They're getting engaged in the story. And sometimes it's because that's their story, or they haven't done some of their own self-care and healing around that. So I just think this whole topic for everybody, it's just a good reminder that we've got to be doing our own self-care and make sure that our boundaries are strong, and that and I also hear so often that people that work in our field will say, I'm doing my recovery all day long in this job, and replacing some of their own, whether it's their therapy or their own work or getting to their own meetings for them, they're justifying that because they work in this field that they're spending all day in recovery. And I have found that I need more of my own self-care working in this field. That a whole day of helping others in my job and trying to help people find the right treatment, find the right next step, can be very draining. And many Fridays I'm completely exhausted from a week of giving. And I truly need the weekend to fill my tank back up. So just want to touch on that this work, even though we're talking recovery, we're not doing our own recovery work, whatever that looks like for us. So self-care, I supervise a few people in some other roles, and it's always month by month a topic that's coming up with people who work in this field. And then just a touch on that balance piece, Glenn, we had talked about that importance of, a lot of business development there. It's a business. We've got numbers. We're driving revenue. We've got to manage our time well. We've got people that we report to that have other people many times that they are reporting numbers to, and so there can feel that feeling of pressure can come at us, and so balancing that and making sure that we're working smarter. I've always said I want to have a really good smart day, not a hard day, and make sure that I'm being thoughtful with the phone calls that I'm making, and that whole dialing to just meet those magic numbers that I called 40 people. I'd much rather have 3 meaningful, deep conversations with the referral source over just, leaving a bunch of voicemails of people that may or may not know me and may not call me back, and that And that's that branding and versus,
Yes.
the selling part of this. And we got to do it all. And I think your point is digital can do a lot of that touching and building trust behind the scenes, but just, I've always really looked at my manpower and my time as a different entity and what's the best use of my time. And, this week I'm working on filling up my calendar for 2 or 3 weeks from now. It's too late to fill up my calendar this week. I always can sneak in an emergency or kind of a last minute thing. I usually can do that, but I'm always thinking ahead and looking at my calendar 2 and 3 weeks ahead. So.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the things that I do see is not talked about enough, the difference between branding and business development in the human space. We can do a lot of those different touches for the branding piece digitally, whether it's through alumni journeys, through an email campaign. We can do some of those touches, and it is important. Branding is extremely important for either referral source or for the direct client, where our name or the name of the company that we represent, it rolls off the tongue because we're always there, we're always around. However, I think sometimes it gets confused with business development, and that branding is just exactly what it is. It is about a brand. It's understanding that this is the name of a facility that we're going to call when we need help. It does not directly translate to an admission. It is more for awareness. It's an awareness campaign. And then on the flip side of that, business development is really about developing that relationship and building that bridge, and that takes more time. They're in my eyes, they're two different things, and I think that digital can help offset that for companies that don't have a large enough staff to have a branding person that's always knocking on doors, dropping off pins, that's doing 40 meetings a week. If you're a larger organization out there and you can do that, that's amazing to have a branding person that is just constantly in all of the different networking meetings. It's always doing the touches and to where they're always available. And then to have the business development rep who really is developing those personal relationships to where whenever somebody says, I need help, they call this person to come get them help. That's, to me, is two different roles. For the smaller organizations or for the private practice, for the clinician that has a small private practice, a lot of that branding work, those touches can be done automatically through digital marketing. We can create a campaign that does a lot of those touches because we understand you're only one person and you can't do both. But I think they're two distinct jobs. I have seen some leadership feel that 40 touches in a week is good for a business development campaign, and that to me is definitely a challenge. That's much more of a branding, whereas 20 touches a week for a branding campaign isn't enough. But it's I feel like it's right around 20 to 25 where that business development person can really establish meaningful conversations and meaningful relationships and really build trust, because that's what we're trying to do, right? Is build trust. That's the goal. Can you talk a little bit about the being authentic and knowing your role in business development, how that shows up for you in building that trust with the patient, with the provider? What I guess what has been that experience with you in being authentic and being and knowing your role?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is over time, I've learned to be a really good listener. And I think listening for those ways that I can be helpful, that I can be collaborative, that I can minimize the interaction if I'm really not the right person for them to be talking to. There's better people suited to help them. So that's just what jumped in my mind first, is starting out versus running through all the things that I do or that I can provide them without even knowing if it's the right fit for them yet. And we find that out by listening to what's going on with them and what they're looking for, whether it's a therapist looking for whether your program or my program is the right fit for their client, whether it's a family member trying to assess. And a lot of it is, how did they find me in the first place? How did that call originate? And if I know that a good friend who knows me really, really well has given them my number, right out of the gate, I'm listening, because I know that there's a reason that we are connected at this for this moment, right? I don't know if I'm answering your question. That felt like a really loaded question. Because I've been doing this for so long, I don't think about some of the details anymore. I did make a note when you were talking about earlier. One of my favorite questions to ask a new therapist that I'm meeting, a new marketer that I'm meeting, is, who is your ideal client? And I can't tell you how many times the squirming begins, and that it's astonishing to me how many people really don't have a prepared, real good, quality, thoughtful answer to that question.
Yes.
And I'm asking that when I am searching or reviewing or looking at if I want to work with somebody or if I want to refer to someone. I know I can go to the website to look if I'm talking to a marketer and they start running through all the modalities and they can't tell me who their ideal client is, there's a disconnect there. And that to me is very valuable information for me to have, that I need to learn a lot more about this clinical team before I can refer to this program.
Absolutely.
I feel like I jumped around and avoided your question, but sorry.
No worries. I do see that. I also see in this, you can tell whenever you're interacting with people that are being authentic and that will say things like, I don't know, instead of knowing everything. Honesty, I think that's extremely important. Also, people that will say whenever a person is not appropriate for their program. I think that's an important trust builder. Last thing I want to ask you and touch base on, and then we're going to get into some question and answer. And so before we wrap this up, if you have some questions, I know we have one in there. Keegan's asked the question, and we're going to get to that. If you have a question for us, remember, we want you to be a part of this discussion. So please put it in the Q&A for us in the Q&A section, and let's go through and have a discussion around it. But the last thing that I really want to touch base on, that I have a lot of experience seeing with different individual reps is asking for business. That it's okay to ask for business. It's okay to say that, and a lot of times that's missed, especially in some of the newer reps. Is not just asking for it, and how to do that. So. Talk to me a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the question and answer. How do you ask for business?
I'm pretty direct. If I just ask, do you have anyone in your practice right now that you can think of that might need a trauma program right now, or that needs to do some deep dive work around their trauma? Or do you have anyone discharging from your treatment center right now that would be a good fit for our trauma program? Now, I have to assume that they know what I'm selling first. So I'm not going to ask that question until I am sure that they know who I'm representing and details about my program. So that has to come first. And so that would be the one thing that I would mention, that it's hard to ask for business when people don't know what you're selling.
Yes, which goes back to kind of the whole process of actually telling people what you do in a way that it's not just like everybody else. We have to clearly define our goals, our objectives, our process, what we do, what we're selling, and then ask for business. I think that's really important.
I had, real quick, I just pulled this up on my phone. I had this list of qualifying questions that I used for years. When I knew that I was kind of interviewing someone to see if they were going to be a possible referral source for residential treatment. And there were just simple questions, and I would just encourage salespeople on this call or leaders that are training salespeople to be thinking about, what are your qualifying questions? Who are going to be the people that are going to be able to refer not just one person to your program, but multiple people. And so a couple of them were, when was the last time you referred someone to treatment? How many referrals have you made to treatment this year? What type of patients do you support in your practice? This was geared to therapists. Where do you send people to treatment? You know, if I was representing a cash pay residential program and they were referring to all Medicaid programs, that gave me information that what I was selling might not be aligned with their client base, right? And I might, you know, it doesn't mean that we're mean or we don't want to have relationships with these people, and they would be possibly on a list for me when I needed to refer to a family to a Medicaid facility or a resource, right? But that was valuable information for me on how much time do I want to spend with this therapist or this program who's doing all Medicaid business, and I'm over here selling $30,000 treatment. So those are just some thoughtful things that I came up with back in the days when I was selling residential, around helping me qualify people that I really wanted to spend more time with and develop that meaningful trust and rapport that was really going to turn into admissions. You know, and my goal was always 2 to 3 admissions a month. I wanted to be working with people that were not just one a year, but I worked with people that were giving me 2 or 3 admissions a month. And I spent my time on those accounts, the bulk of my time, as I was nurturing new business.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And for sharing that little bit of insight. And you know, remember, this is a two-sided approach to the same thing, is that we can't do one without the other. We have to have the digital side of this, and we have to have the people side of this, and both have to be working in tandem, presenting the same information to build that trust, no matter what the client or patient, if it's coming from a referral source or if it's coming from the patient themselves. So with that, I want to get into a couple of these questions and then we'll wrap up. I know we're running a little late on time, but I did want to ask, or I did want to put this out here. So Keegan asks, do you have any information on how users interact with the site? For example, what path do they take? What percentage of site visitors visit the team page? And yes, we do. I don't have the current numbers just handy right now. I can tell you this, that as we continue to evolve, the client or the customer or the patient is spending less and less time on each page in the initial visit. They are looking for these trust builders early on, and so they will scan those pages pretty quickly and then go to call. They're looking for team. They're looking for the do you do what I'm looking for, and do you have people that can do that? They're looking around. Now, if it's a referral source such as a private practice therapist that is looking to refer a client to SUD treatment, they're going to spend a lot more time on the team page. They're going to look for those trust builders. They're going to spend more time than the patient would. I do have that data, Keegan. I would love to go over that with you. But that's going to be more of a one-on-one thing. And at the end of this, I'll give you our contact information and we can have a conversation about that. I have another question. Has anyone else run into difficulties with Facebook, Google, when attempting to advertise for their SUD treatment center? We're a quasi-governmental agency, and the only solution we've seen is to invest in a costly certification. So I will take a minute to talk just briefly about that. Yes, I don't know if you guys remember the Wild West before LegitScript and what that looked like in the days of mass patient brokering and people advertising all over the country for different facilities in different states. Sometimes they weren't even facilities. And one of our team members who at the time was working for Google was challenged on stage about this, and it was a very public challenging, and Google did not like that very much. They didn't like being challenged and labeled as patient brokers, and so Google stopped all advertising for substance use treatment for a 1-year period. And whenever they came back, they employed LegitScript, and you have to be LegitScript certified now to advertise on Google. It is a tedious process. It is not a lot of fun. However, I do find that it is better than not being able to advertise at all. And so, yes, it is a challenge. And that is one of the reasons why we have a team that's dedicated to that, to help our clients walk through that process and help them to communicate with the LegitScript team to make that an easier process. But it is a process, and it's there for a reason. Because before that, there were a number of people, individuals that were putting themselves out there as facilities, and it was causing to a large amount of fraud, and a lot of individuals were being hurt by that practice. And so, yes, it's not a lot of fun. We're really glad that it's there, and we can definitely help you with that. Let's see, are there any other questions out there? Do you guys have any questions on the business development front or on the digital marketing front that you'd like for us to clarify? We've got to take a couple more minutes to go through that. If you have any questions about that, remember in the end that the challenge with this really is that we are selling this abstract product out there. We're selling this alliance, this healing that takes place between patient and provider. That's what we're selling. And so it's going to be a challenge to put that out there. Let's see here. I'm reading this one more question here. How do you navigate having no control over whether a provider makes a referral, i.e. there are so many stars that must align after you provide program info for the provider actually to make the referral? That is the enigma. You hit the nail on the head, is that we can't control the timing of when that conversion takes place. The goal of a marketing department and the goal of a business development team is to establish the relationship and nurture that relationship with each of the providers for long enough to where there is a pipeline that's established, where there is and I don't even want to use the term pipeline. Let's use lifeline. There is a lifeline that's established where whenever any particular individual is ready and that conversion is ready to be made, it's a warm relationship that has been ongoing through the period of time, and it's a smooth transition. That if we are, as an industry or as a company, if any company is relying on that one conversion at that one point in time, we're missing the boat. It's about being in constant communication, in constant relationship with one another, where whenever that person is ready to convert over from a possible to an admission, that we are there and have the relationship established. And we always encourage the companies that we work with to look at the admissions over the course of a year and average those out, because that's really where we're going to start seeing the trend. That's where we're going to start seeing what works. If we're drilling down and looking at admission by admission, one at a time, there's no data. It doesn't make sense, because you can't quantify that moment of change that takes place when a person decides that it's time to go. So I hope that answered the question there. Allison, do you have anything you want to add on that?
No, I just how important it is, if you've been nurturing a new referral relation and they finally make that referral, take good care of it. If they need to get updates, if they are expecting to get that client back, like I'm talking to my therapist that refer to treatment, and then so many times treatment centers will refer them to a different therapist. They just, there's just this disconnect with that continuum of care and that communication, and that can ruin a new referral source quicker than anything if there's not good quality communication. So I just encourage people to keep that relationship and that communication door open, and make sure that if you've promised things that you deliver.
Excellent. I do want to say I put my contact information in the chat over there. For those of you guys that have logged on, if you're not and you don't have access to the chat, You can always reach out to me. My email is ghadley@dreamscapemail.com. And my direct line is 985-502-2849. And I would love to continue the conversation and kind of get into the weeds on some of this stuff. I know this was a broad overview of both of these things, but hopefully we gave you some food for thought and we can continue this discussion. Allison, do you want to let everyone know how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I threw my cell in there. I'll leave it at that for now, because I know but feel free to put my cell in your phone. If you want to reach me, you can text me.
Wonderful. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining us today and really talking about both sides of the outreach, the digital marketing piece and the business development piece and how they fit together. Remember that we're selling this connection and we're selling this trust between patient and provider. And so we, as the outreach branch of these entities, we need to establish trust both digitally with our websites, through our digital marketing campaigns, and our business development outreach specialists also need to be out there representing the same thing and building that trust. So with that, Allison, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm putting my cell back in because I guess I didn't share it. So here, I'm doing it one more time.
Okay.
There we go. I sent it to everybody.
Right on. And if you have any questions or want to get in touch with Allison, you can definitely reach out to me. And with that, we thank you guys so much. Enjoy your Wednesday afternoon or morning, wherever you guys are at, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.